hails from Burke, Virginia. He enjoyed a successful and satisfying 20-year career in the U.S. Navy. He started with assignments in an F-14 Tomcat Squadron in the elite Top Gun training program and followed by later assignments to the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the U.S. 7th Fleet. Dave Baranek joins us. He retired from the Navy in '99 and now works as a defense contractor in the Washington, D.C. area. He is the author of a book you can find over at RadioNemo.com, Top Gun Days, Dogfighting, Cheating Death, and Hollywood Glory is one of America's best fighter jocks. And if you click on that link there, you will get everywhere that books are sold. Dave, welcome to the show. Can we begin by simply saying, tell us about BIO, B-I-O.
Hey, Jimmy Mac, thanks for having me. I got to tell you one thing. When you read the subtitle of the book, Dogfighting, Cheating Death, and Hollywood Glory, that was my literary agent. He goes, Dave, you really need to throw something out there. So he came up with that. It's all true, but yeah, my call sign Bio is based on my last name. When I started out, they were, a lot of guys want to be called Tiger or Killer or something like that. And I thought I'd be clever. So my last name Baranek rhymes with bionic. And I told the guy, I was a backseater, and I told my pilot, I go, my call sign is Bionic. And he looks at me, and I was, 6 foot. Yeah, exactly. And that's what he did. I was 6'2", 165 pounds, and he goes, I can't call you Bionic. So he shortened it to Bio, and that stuck. And I go, you know what? That's good. It's kind of neutral. A lot of call signs are insulting. Some of them are very clever, and so I'll take Bio.
Well, what's really great about it, too, in reference to shortening Bionic, I keep thinking about the fate of the $6 million man, which, by the way, you come very close to suffering. You know, and it's like, it's a remarkable story. Like I said, the book itself, it reads so quickly. It is such a fast read, and it's wonderful in regard to kind of putting together things causally, the idea that what you're doing in many ways is connecting dots. And I don't know if this was part of the intention in the beginning, but slowly but surely we begin to see how the men, in the time period that you were moving through it, how the people were selected to become members of Top Gun, how that ends up playing itself out. And there's a real construction that goes on in this book. Can you talk a little bit about how you choose to write it, where you choose to start, and what you choose to kind of emphasize throughout the course of Top Gun Days?
Oh, yes. When I had no idea that I would write a book the whole time I was in the Navy. It just wasn't even something that crossed my mind. And then about a year after I left the Navy, I was driving home from my office job, and I thought I'd read a magazine article, and then I go, no, I'm going to write a book. And I got to tell you, the first thing I thought of was the opening line. And that eventually got changed because I had an editor, and he goes, no, that's not a good opening line. But that was my inspiration. And then as soon as I got home, I told my wife, I go, I think I want to write a book. And she thought about it for about 3 seconds. She goes, oh, okay. Because she goes, you need a hobby. And so once I decided that, I just committed. And I just got to work writing it, and I outlined events over a 7-year period of my life, and my wife helped me at every step. She gave me excellent criticism and editorials, and then as I was writing, some things I go, well, that's just not writing out well, so I just took it off the list and added other things. I enjoyed writing this book.
So, and it shows, by the way. So you end up. So there's a story, in the not the first half, but the first half of the first half is a good way to describe it. Where, with the person who was actually wrestling with a parachute in the water from an ejection, have ever believed that would end up as an instructor and a consultant on a major Hollywood movie. I mean, I'm curious, does the guy floating in the water that day actually have the confidence to believe that the world that he would walk into would be that one? Because that's essentially the core of this story, is a guy who just did one darn thing after another, simply did his job, also made the decision to show up 15 minutes early on a regular basis, and that makes a big difference as well. But can you talk about, were there any moments of wonder where you say, I can't believe I'm here?
Yes, there was a lot of these. Luckily, at the time, I wasn't that introspective. because, I mean, you get living in your head and all that, and you're going to, double overthink it and stuff. But one of the things going back in my recollection was when I was at the squadron informal party for Thanksgiving, and I had already gone through the Top Gun school, and one of the pilots in the squadron had been a Top Gun instructor, and then had come back to the F-14 squadron. And I just had this idea that I might want to be an instructor. And I went and I asked him, I go, Streak, what do I do next if I want to be a Top Gun instructor? And he goes, well, Bio, he goes, what did they say to you when you graduated? And I said, well, they told me that if I wanted to be an instructor to come back and see him. And in my mind, in my subconscious, I'm going, oh, they're just being nice. They say that to everybody. But Streak goes, Bio, you should go over and see him. And to me, that was like almost, a sword in the stone moment or something. That was like the beginning of this process of becoming a Top Gun instructor and getting involved with the movie and everything else.
One of the things that I would take a quick break here and kind of set up. I'll ask you the question before we hit the break, and then you just come out swinging. Dave Baranek joins us this morning. We're talking Top Gun days, but I do want to talk to you about Top Gun in regards to their methodology for training and, more importantly, their methodology for analyzing flights afterwards. So many of our drivers engage in what is called post-trip. They actually make a point of breaking down the trip at the end of it and checking everything and asking themselves those tough questions. There's a really remarkable way you guys have of doing that, and I want you to kind of touch on that. We'll be right back after these messages on Dave Nemo Weekends. Dave Baranek joins us again this morning. It's good to have you on the show. I really enjoyed this book immensely. Really enjoyed the kind of analysis of the methodology by which Top Gun operates. And I was hoping that maybe you could share with our listeners the rigorousness and the dispassion of a very passionate situation.
Thanks, Jimmy Mack. Thanks for having me. And just to go back to one more point, when I was writing this book, of course, I wanted to tell my story, but I wanted to make it a vehicle for explaining how Top Gun works and where it came from and stuff. And one thing that you're talking about is the way they debrief dogfight training, which is, the informal name for close-in aerial combat. And they do this not only for close-in, but they do this for all their training. And this is something that the original, I think it was 8 instructors, they came up with this idea when they started the school in 1968-69. And they realized that the person who loses the dogfight is going to feel defensive. They're going to feel bad. And so when they go in there to debrief the dogfight, rather than saying, I shot you because you didn't fly your airplane well, what they said was, the bandit got a good shot on the F4 because the F4 wasn't using his best turn radius. And so they went into, not only they depersonalized it, but they also turned it into teaching points. And that really helped to make the students more receptive to learning from their mistakes.
It's so funny too, Dave, because there is a German term that is like almost impossible for me to pronounce because I don't speak German, Fremdeffekt, which means the alienation effect. And everybody thinks it means to be alienated from what you're doing, but it doesn't. What it actually means is it says making strange. And the idea is that you for instance, a dumb example would be the federal government is merely an insurance company with an army. And when you think about it like that, it changes the way you look at it. And in many ways, the approach allows the participants to step outside and become a second person. That's what I thought was so cool about that you're no longer the participant in the event, you're an observer in the event, and then you report it, whether you are the winner or the loser or the one who has the advantage. You report it as if you are simply doing the job of a writer, where you are recounting the facts of the situation.
That's
right?
very good. That's very good. And something else, though, I mean, going along with that is when a new instructor gets to Top Gun, they go through an instructor training course or program. And they have to be, one, they have to be good aviators, and two, they have to learn to do this debrief. They have to learn to have excellent recall and observation of the dogfight that they just got out of. And so Top Gun instructors are very well trained before they are, turned loose as full instructors.
I just thought it was so cool, too.
Program. Yeah.
I thought it was so cool, too. I had that same thought. I'm reading this, and I'm going, they're training the trainers. I'm like, literally, even people who are going through the program are being trained not only to be better pilots, but they're being not to be better just pilots or better second seat. They're being trained to be people who can communicate this information to almost anybody, so that
that's right.
And the foundation of a good education, and this is what's so remarkable about this book. The foundation of a good education is any education is really about a shared vocabulary between instructor and student, so that both sides are actually learning and getting deeper in their understanding of it. And this program really focuses on creating a vocabulary that both the pilots and their instructors can share, and actually be able to talk about it as if it was a seminar rather than just simply a regurgitation of facts and figures, right?
Yeah, and it's certainly not I kicked your butt or any of that. It's dispassionate. And here's the other good thing, and we used to say this as instructors. We're teaching these guys to defeat us in combat. And so if you're a Top Gun instructor and you do this, you dogfight sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, almost every day or whatever. So you do this all the time. And you go out there and you're going to defeat the students the first few times. But then when they beat you, you can take satisfaction and go, look, this guy gets it. He's learned something. This is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the job is even when you lose, you've won because you've trained somebody up. And I just thought, and by the way, guys, if you get a chance to read the book, the discussions about why certain planes are used to kind of simulate other planes, and those explanations are really really logical and thoughtful. The book doesn't dumb itself down, but it also manages to really communicate some really kind of interesting concepts about the complexities of why certain planes are picked. I do want to get to something, though, in regards to the book. We got to talk about this. Just like Urban Cowboy, the movie that many people, gravitate towards in this story is actually inspired by a magazine article. That it's actually a bunch of producers, Bruckheimer and Simpson, kind of going, we got this idea. We read this thing. This would be kind of good about a couple of mythic heroes in the air. Can you talk about your experiences? Because there's some great pictures in here, too, of you with the stars of Top Gun.
Well, I read that about Urban Cowboy in the Mickey Gilley obituary, and I thought that was pretty interesting, too. That was inspired by a magazine article. But in our case, it was an article in California Magazine about a couple of actual students going through the class. And that article, I put it on my website, topgunbio.com. It's the whole original article is on there. And then that inspired, as you said, Simpson and Bruckheimer. And I got to tell you, Jimmy Mack, when the movie when they were making the original Top Gun movie, it was amusing, but there wasn't a lot of hype around it. Because, one, we didn't really know, the actors were not really famous. Tom Cruise was just barely on anyone's radar.
He was just getting there. There. He's not Tom Cruise yet. This movie makes him Tom Cruise.
Right. And there was no pressure to live up to. So if that movie would have been a failure, it's like, oh, well, that happens. And so they just came out there, and I do have to say they had a very good crew, very good people, writing it, directing it, producing, and all that. And so they did have a team of winners, and those guys, they had a lot of passion. And from watching them work, I saw their technical expertise. And they asked us, the Top Gun instructors, they asked for our input in many, many places. And then they used what we gave them, but they converted it to Hollywood so it would be entertaining,
Yeah, it's really funny, by the way. It also has one of my favorite lines of all time. If you can't find anybody to fly with you, give me a call. I'll do it. It's the biggest star in it wasn't Tom Cruise. It's Tom Skerritt, who is pretty terrific in that movie as well, which is it's a real blast. And can you talk about, the idea of understanding what it means to get a Hollywood movie right as opposed to getting the absolute details of a situation right? But they really did work their butts off to try to get that information as right as they possibly could while still creating an entertaining movie, right?
Yes, I talked. I can give you just a couple of obvious examples. Which when I tell you, you'll say yeah. And I actually personally said this to Tony Scott, the director, because I went with a gentleman named John Semken, who had been a Tom F-14 pilot. He and I went to Hollywood for 2 days, and we helped him edit the film and come up with dialogue. And while we're up there, I'm saying, Tony, our airplanes don't fly this close together in real life. And he goes, Bio, I'm not making a documentary. And so that was an example. If you are in combat and you fly that close to somebody, then when he blows up, he's going to blow up your airplane. But to make it look good on the screen, they had to compress all the distances. So everybody's flying real close together, flying real low, and things like that. And so that's how they Hollywoodized it.
By the way, really quickly, guys, I'm telling you right now, if you get a chance to pick up Top Gun Days, Dogfighting, Cheating Death, and Hollywood Glory is one of America's best fighter jocks. By the way, you made a comment to me on the hard break, and I think it's important to point out that you want to make it really clear. Talk to me about you being a pilot. You made a comment about that, right?
Okay, sure. I was not a pilot. I was a radar intercept officer, or RIO. And that's because when the F-14 was made, they needed a guy in the back seat dedicated to operate the radar. And the Navy trained radar intercept officers from the days of the F-4 Phantom and also the A-6. A lot of planes back then had two guys. And they did not teach us to fly the plane. And so we were not trained pilots. We were trained as, a second crewman. So then at the Top Gun school, back when I was there, 3/4 of the instructors were pilots and 1/4 were RIOs. And so I was fortunate because there were not many RIO Top Gun instructors, but I was one of them. Now I'll let you in on a little secret, Jimmy Mac. The planes that we flew at Top Gun did have controls in the back. And so I learned to fly. I did learn to fly, but I learned to fly in an F-5 Tiger II. So that's the way you want to learn to fly, because that's a cool little airplane.
I got to tell you, by the way, and talk about Nerves of Steel, guys. I've been through this book twice now, and where I really kind of refocused myself was back. There is a harrowing passage. We're not going to have enough time to talk about it because we're actually out of time. But there is a harrowing passage about somebody not paying attention to the fourth cable on an aircraft carrier, and split-second decision and really kind of drilled-in training end up saving a lot of people's lives because it is an unbelievably harrowing story. It's a great story. And, Dave, you're welcome back to come back and talk about this book anytime you want to. There's so much more to talk about. Is there any website, anything you want to send people to at this moment before we get out of here?
Yeah, my website, topgunbio.com, topgunbio.com. It's got pictures, short stories, and things like that. And I've enjoyed talking to you. You're a good guy to talk to about this. So
are you. So are you, by the way. Had an absolute blast. By the way, you looking forward to the next Top Gun movie?
I am. I've heard early reviews. I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard early reviews, and they're positive. So I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, and Rich Eisen, who's one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, actually ended up giving 15 minutes of just absolute love in its direction. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best and probably get it. Thank you, Dave. Like I said, once again, welcome back anytime, okay?
Okay, thanks for having me, Jimmy Mac. See ya.
You got it. Guys, head over to RadioNemo.com. Go to Sleeper Cab Library. If you go over there, Top Gun Days, Dogfighting, Cheating Death, and Hollywood Glory as one of America's best fighter jocks.